So let's go. Ready? Okay.
Yes.
Um, Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsa Brenner, and I am really excited for today's conversation because anxious attachment is one of those topics that so many people resonate with, but I think it's become a bit of a buzzword. We hear the term everywhere, but not many people understand what is actually happening beneath the surface. And in today's show, we have a very special guest where we will define what anxious attachment is and some tips to help heal your nervous system in creating healthier relationships. I'd like to introduce to you Haile, who is a nervous systems coach and emotional processing practitioner. Welcome to the show, Haile.
Hi, you guys. Hi, everyone.
I'm so happy you're here because one of the things I really appreciate about your work is your approach to healing through the nervous system and not just the mindset. So before we get into all of that, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you came into this work.
Yeah, of course. So my journey, I think, starts as any healer journey does. We all have our own um, ways that we move through the world and our own experiences and our own upbringings. And so mine started actually at the age of 1. My dad abandoned me, as we like to call it, but he just, through his own circumstances, had to leave, and that cultivated a very anxious human being in adulthood. So, through my healing, through choosing men that didn't necessarily serve me, that weren't necessarily emotionally available, that weren't attuned to my needs, they weren't really the best men, you could say. I chose them throughout my life, and now coming to terms with my anxious attachment, I have realized that I want to heal that part of me, and I want to heal others as well. So I got certified, um, and now it's a practice every single day. And so that's how I came about being in this realm, I guess you could say.
That's great. And I think that's what makes your perspective so refreshing because you've lived the journey, you've been in the process, and you understand it's more than beneath the surface and just changing our thoughts, but or thinking differently, but more how our bodies are wanting to stay safe and how our minds can shift. And so that changes the whole conversation with your body, right?
Hmm. Oh,
So,
yeah. I mean, most of these patterns do 100% live in the body, and we don't even know they're there.
yes. And I think it's really important just to get down to basics and discuss what is anxious attachment? What is it actually?
Yeah, so anxious attachment is one of the 4 attachment styles. And anxious attachment is the person that maybe grew up with inconsistencies. They grew up with a parent that maybe attuned to their needs sometimes, and then maybe the next day they didn't attune to their needs other times. Or we have a child that had inconsistent love, or felt like they had to perform for love, or felt like they had to overgive, overshare. They had to be on their best behavior to even receive the love that they ultimately deserved. So that manifests into a very, very anxious human being, that manifests into someone who seeks reassurance constantly from their partner, someone who is very hyper vigilant on cues from their partner, someone who's always over analyzing maybe text messages, maybe they're over analyzing just a facial expression, maybe they're over analyzing a tone that could be a very reasonable tone, or like somebody else is just stressed, but this person is very hyper vigilant, they're very aware, they really crave connection, they really crave um, being close to their partner. They almost like um, it's like oxygen for them. They need it in order to feel safe, but it's ultimately not necessarily the healthiest route they go about these things. So, yeah.
That's interesting because I love how it's more of a protective pattern that
Mm,
that you end up embracing, and rather than it being a personality trait. A lot of people will identify, oh, I'm needy or I'm anxious, but really it's just what the nervous system has learned, and that through repetitive experiences and seeking the validation. And this shows up in so many different ways, but just how do you think it shows up in everyday life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people think of attachment styles and they think of their relationship on a relational sense, but
Mhm.
we're having relational encounters all day, every day, right? At work, you might feel anxious. You might feel like you have to people please at work. You might feel like you have to go above and beyond just to feel seen or heard. And then you might be doing every single thing right. But then you still subconsciously feel like you might get fired for some small little thing, or you might feel like you're not performing correctly. Or even in a family sense, you might feel like you have to earn your spot at the table, even though you were born into this family. It's kind of like the shadow that follows you throughout life. Um, and it's not a good way to be, right? You don't want to be anxious all the time. You don't want to have these like jitters. You don't want to have this like overthinking cloud hang over your head. You don't want to have to walk through life like that, right? It's very, very difficult.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that everyone, almost everyone, has had moments like those, and maybe not even recognizing by checking your phone, replaying conversations in your head, wondering if someone's energy is feeling different. And,
Mhm.
you described a little bit about what's happening in those moments, but what's happening in the body in those moments? Where does it come from? I mean, where does it really below the surface come from?
Yeah, so the nervous system is a tricky thing, right? So it's over 500 million years old. So this sympathetic part of ourselves, the nervous system, which is if you are anxiously attached, if you're somebody that resonates with that attachment style, you are living in a state of perpetual stress if it's like really, really intense. But you're living in the sympathetic nervous system. So you're living in a system that is really, really old. You're trying to fight that system, you're trying to combat that system, and that system is ultimately there to protect you. So it can't tell the difference between you being chased by a tiger 500 million years ago, or however long ago, or like 10,000 years ago, to now when your partner's not texting you back, or when they have an angry face, or their tone shifts into frustration. Like, you can probably relate to that, right? Like, have you ever felt that way in a relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, and we all come from different backgrounds and we all have different attachment styles, and then there's layers that come within the attachment styles. And so then you have two different energy fields coming into one little network and
Mhm.
really trying to figure out how to vibe with each other and come into a common ground. I think a lot of people will say, oh, I had this attachment style, but then they don't really know where it came from. Or if they do, they don't even know how to manage it. They just say, oh, it's from my childhood. This is just how I am. But this is where
Mhm.
I think it's really important to educate people that awareness isn't enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Awareness is ultimately the first step of healing. Absolutely. So if you have awareness that you have this attachment style, that you know where it comes from, that you move through the world this way, that you attract certain partners, that maybe you keep attracting the same person in a different body. You know this in your brain and your mind. You conceptually can internalize this, and you are that person. That's step one, is awareness. Absolutely. I wonder how many people know what step two is. Because it's very hard. Step two, ultimately, in any healing phase, when healing anything in life, is acceptance of who you are, and you are the way you came into this world. Your parents gave you the tools that they had at the time, and that ultimately led to who you are as an adult, and accepting that fact. So if you're anxiously attached, accepting that you maybe seek reassurance, that maybe
Right.
you didn't have the best childhood, or you look back and you were like, oh, I feel so bad for the child that didn't get her needs attuned to, or just accepting that version of you, that part of you that just wanted love, that felt like she deserved love, that felt like she was worthy of all this love, and she didn't ultimately get there. And
Right.
then, so that's the second step, acceptance. And then, if we can be so lucky as to move into the third step, which is repair,
Yes.
repairing our nervous system, repairing those parts of us, repairing basically from the inside out and on a body level, not just a mind level. So therapy is great, but from the body, attuning to those parts of us, whatever that looks like for you. You can work with a coach, you can do somatic therapy. Lots of modalities out there. There's many and not few. And then the fourth one, and this kind of turns it into a practice, a daily practice of like catching yourself, pausing and tuning in. This is the rewiring. So, rewiring your brain. So, your body is sending signals to your brain every single day from your environment, from a relational sense, from people in your life, from everything around you. And that's the repair. So, repairing every part of you. That's the fourth step. And then the fifth is integration.
Right.
So, are you integrating this into your life?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that because as we lay out the different steps, you know, I think that one of my favorite steps is step four, which is, the repair. And I think that was four, right? And
A
then,
three.
oh, three.
Three.
And then
Yeah.
going from three to five, and then and being aware when you are sitting there thinking and you're starting to spiral, maybe you spiral for a whole day. And then you
Hmm.
start to become aware and start to integrate. Well, maybe then your next challenge is you feel that feeling again and you only spiral half the day. And then the
Hmm.
next time you catch yourself sooner and say, I'm only going to let myself do this for an hour, and then try to catch it and shorten that amount of time.
Right.
I
Right.
I love that because I think a lot of people they understand step one and two, maybe three, but then once you
Hmm.
get like the repair and integration, that's I think the hardest challenge for people because there's such an important distinction between a storyline that we've been telling ourselves versus what we could be living if we just let go of that storyline.
Right. Right. And it's so interesting that you said that that's your favorite step because for many people, that's where the turmoil and the catastrophe happens, and they're like digging deep into this old stuff that they didn't necessarily want to unfold. So, it sounds like you've done your own work in that realm too.
I have, I mean, I've had therapy. I coach people. I'm constantly
Hmm.
working on myself to evolve myself because I don't like to sit in those feelings, and I know that that's not where we're supposed to be in life, is sitting
Right.
without any support, right? And so,
Yeah.
but I think what's also interesting is, as we talk about anxious attachment, you had mentioned the four phases of anxious attachment. So let's go through the four each and just explain it briefly, and then we'll go through some tips and tricks and things we can do to help people as much as we can and through this one episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
All
So,
right.
four faces. As Kirsta said, there's four phases, and they're ultimately all different strategies for the same exact fear. So we might have this fear as an anxious attacher that we're going to be abandoned or rejected or not feel safe or loved correctly. So that can manifest in four different ways. So there's the chaser, the pleaser, the detective, and the ghost. And for anybody that's listening, I want you to see if you can resonate with any of these four layers. They can kind of mold into each other and go into each other. But so, number one, the chaser. This is maybe the most common one, I'd say. This is the one where we are chasing reassurance. We might be overthinking things. We might be very um, we might speak they talk a lot. They like to kind of speak a lot, get all their words out. They are the ones that usually end up with avoidance, I've found. So they fulfill each other's prophecy in that sense. So they chase the love over and over again, and this can manifest in like kind of a lot of arguments, asking like, are we okay right now? Are we good? Are we going to be okay? Like, are you okay? Like always checking in with your partner, chasing on like a little micro way like that. So that's the chaser.
Yeah.
And then the pleaser, this is the performer. They're doing backflips in the relationship. They're going above and beyond. They're people pleaser is where this term comes from. So they're people
Yes.
pleasing up and down. This child, maybe growing up, felt like they had to perform or earn love to even be in the room. So that manifests into the relationship as kind of not feeling worthy. So you kind of you say yes to everything and you just give. You give so much that you ultimately lose yourself and abandon yourself in the relationship altogether, which is it's unfortunate. And then by the end of the relationship, you don't even know who you are anymore, which is sad. So
Yeah,
that's the pleaser. And you can probably see parts of yourself in these too, because we're all human and
absolutely. I mean, I
they're
can
in
see a
all of
little
them.
bit both, and I mean, as the two that we've already covered, I see how it's manifested within me, within my partner, and vice versa, and on different levels and different just different situations. And so it's kind of like that's why you can't just say, "Oh, I'm anxious attachment," right? No, there's a
Yeah,
lot more layers that go along with it. Right.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, that's very interesting. I mean, we as humans, we can do these things constantly just because we don't feel safe. So,
And I think that the
number,
next, oh, I was gonna say, the next
yeah,
piece, I believe, I feel like these are the two that could be misconstrued as a different label. And more so maybe under a little bit of avoidant attachment, which we'll just touch upon the dance between the anxious and the avoidant. But I feel like these are kind of layers I don't think people associate as much with anxious if they aren't educated.
yeah. Yeah, and I think all attachment styles kind of just bleed into each other. That's why when
Mm,
people are learning about their attachment style, they get very confused because they're like, this part's me, but then this part doesn't sound like me. So I don't think I'm anxious attachment. I think I'm avoidant. So they kind of move into each other and they're
right.
like, that's not me. This is me. So there's parts of us in all of this. And we just need to figure out what that part is inside of us and then mend that part independently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So number three is the detective, and this used to be me. Like, hands down, I was over analyzing, I was decoding my partner's like methods. I was like sitting there watching him, like, is he really in love with me? Is he really doing this? Like, is he doing all the right things? You know, you take notes, you start notes. And this is the person that will abandon their needs. They won't vocalize their needs or their boundaries. They will be very hyper vigilant. They are always watching like a hawk and they will tally it up at the end.
And then
So if
they
that's,
probably look at their list and say, okay, well,
yeah,
this doesn't make sense anymore because the list is so long. And then they feel like they're so small, like why bring it up?
yep, exactly. And they're holding grudges as well. This is the type of anxious attachment that is holding things down and then they bring it up ultimately when it's not relevant anymore. It's like it's been so long, it's been so much time, but then yeah. Okay, so that's the detective. And then the ghost is the one that gets confused for a disorganized attachment. But
Okay.
there's a part of this anxious attachment sector that can be an anxious attachment, basically. So the ghost is somebody who wants love and then they have it and it feels really intense and they kind of push it away,
Mm,
especially during conflict. So this can be tied to a deep abandonment wounds. So if a caregiver left, maybe when you were younger, you ultimately weren't chosen at a young age. So in your adult life, you feel like you have to be hyper vigilant to keep that love. Or you feel very, very safe in love, and then you get into a conflict and it feels scary, so you have to leave before they leave you, which
mhm.
is very, very sad for a partner because they're constantly either pretending to break up with their partner because it's a protection mechanism, or they're like just pushing them away. It's like self sabotage, basically. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I was watching some of your other videos earlier because you're always popping up on my feed. And
Oh,
I love all your content. And I feel like this one particularly, of course, it's all going to be different. But I think with this one, when you push the other person away, that's what you really want is the closeness, but it's so scary to feel close, but that's what you need to self-soothe. But then you can't. bridge that gap and then you end up just walking away, like you said, self-sabotage.
Hmm.
Really sad to
Absolutely. You nailed
see.
it.
And I feel like that's part of the anxious avoidant dance. You-
Yeah.
and why do you think that, those seem to be like the two predominant titles or labels, whatever you want to. I know it's
Mhm.
obviously a lot more in the subconscious mind rather than
Yeah.
what we're talking about consciously, but how do you feel like this dynamic, these two people or these two different types seem to find each other? Or is that kind of also another label since there's so many different, attachment styles where it bleeds into different areas where you can't really define it?
The anxious and avoidant loop is fulfilling each other's prophecy. They're fulfilling these stories that they ultimately have had since childhood. And when we in our nervous systems, we're ultimately always looking for safe. So if you grew up in a home that felt very different from what safe looked like, so like inconsistency or not getting your needs attuned to or emotionally unavailable, whatever your parents were doing at the time, you that felt familiar. That felt what safe looked like for you as a child. So growing up, you're going to be drawn to that same energy. You're going to be attracted and fall in love ultimately with that same energy. So if your dad was emotionally unavailable, you're going to be like, "Oh, that guy, he's emotionally unavailable. What how can I earn his love? I'm
Right,
going to earn that guy's love because I didn't get it growing up. Oh, he's hot. He's
right.
sexy." Like
Yeah.
but if you take a step back, is he really sexy?
No,
Is it
it's a
really like
challenge. It's a challenge. And I feel like with all of those, with everything you're saying, I feel like it also encompasses with these two roles, which we will definitely do another episode on avoidant attachment, healing that style. But I feel
yeah.
like subconsciously in a conflict, in an argument, you step into the role of that person who abandoned you and you act and you treat the person that you're in the conflict with the same way that you were treated. And so
Mhm.
I mean, I could be wrong, but sometimes I see that when there's conflict in relationships in my life. I'm like, wait, was that how their parent taught or treated them? Is that how they're treating me?
Yeah. Yeah, ultimately that's what we're attracted to. Yeah, definitely with the anxious and avoidant loop, the anxious storyline is that this person's going to leave. That's my storyline. This person will leave me, and I feel that in my bones throughout the entire relationship. And the avoidance storyline is when I get close to intimacy, it doesn't feel safe. It feels intense. It feels too much. It feels like being engulfed. And ultimately, the anxious fulfills that storyline for the avoidant, and the avoidant fulfills that storyline for the anxious. So they are doing this dance, but they're ultimately fulfilling their storyline from childhood.
Wow, that's really powerful to recognize. And I hope that everyone who is listening to this show gets some sort of value out of this because this is really good information and I think this is becoming more of a common practice to talk about, to start putting in the inner work. And by putting in the inner
Mm.
work, it just helps our relationships, not only with ourselves, but people around us. But we have to start with the foundation within. So, and I know that, Haley, I know you have some healing and practical tools we can give our audience before we start to wrap up.
Hmm.
I would love to hear what you have to share.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's those five ARC modalities that I told you about. So that if you're on step one, awareness, then there's acceptance, then there's repair, there's rewire, and integration. So for anybody healing any part of themselves, just recognize what step you're on. And then I would say definitely do some experimenting. So there's all kinds of different healing modalities out there. I remember the first time I did EMDR for trauma release. That was
That
huge.
so
There's, yeah, yeah. Have you tried?
I have. It's woo,
Yeah.
it's good.
It's trippy stuff. It really taps in on an accelerated exponential rate.
Mhm.
I would say definitely myofascial release because if it lives in the body, that remember attachment styles live in these like little protection mechanisms that are there to ultimately protect you, but they're also living in the subconscious mind and the body. So we need to teach the body safety. So anything that's body related, if you want to work with a somatic coach, they are living in the body. They are certified and trained to heal trauma that lives in the body. And avoidant and insecure attachment styles ultimately live in the body. So all of these like little micro tendencies, we wouldn't necessarily call them trauma, but they are micro little traumas that you have to mend, you have to tend to. And then my favorite one of them all, and a lot of people in the community say, like, if you're an insecure attachment, you shouldn't be dating. You should heal yourself before you date. You shouldn't be out in the dating pool. And I actually strongly disagree with this. I feel like trauma happens on a relational sense and happens in relationships. So therefore, it needs to be healed in relationships. So we need to be practicing how to build safety with safe partners, people that want to mend these things with you, people that ultimately cultivate safety in the body with you. I don't know. You could disagree with me.
No, I absolutely think that that is a huge point to make because there's this delicate dance and you can sit in silence and heal yourself all day long, but until you are in a relationship and you're being challenged with these old wounds that come up because when you're in a relationship, you are a mirror of the other person and they are a mirror of you. And that is the point is understanding that and building that safe container to explore and understand. And I feel like there's a lot of toxic things out there on social media that really encourage people to, oh, well, dump this person or don't date this person because of this and X, Y,
Right.
Z. A lot of toxic.
Yeah.
It's not part of our journey as humans. We're part of our journey as a human is to explore and expand and have that safe space and also figuring out how to create the safe space is a challenge in itself. So,
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right, too. Absolutely. And I feel like we're working with a lot of people that are heartbroken and
yeah.
they've been through so much from the other side. And we have ultimately all of these people that just strongly dislike the other side. And we have people that feel very hurt and abandoned and used all over the internet. So just
Um,
being weary that that's out there and not to listen to everything. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, before we close, I just want to say that I really appreciate this information, Haley. And I know that we'll be doing another show and we have other shows to go dive deeper, deeper, deeper. And I'm like, super excited to have you and your knowledge and to be able to share and collaborate. And so, I think my biggest takeaway today is that the anxious attachment isn't something we need to be ashamed of. It's something that we need to embrace. And that it's a protective strategy. And once that is, we make sense of that, we can start to heal and not feel triggered. And when we are triggered, because life will continue to trigger us, but at that point, we'll be able to start doing the repair, the rewiring, and the integration, which are my three favorite steps. So,
I love it.
so where can everyone find you and your coaching and your offering and your courses and everything? Because I'd love to be able to have everyone get a little bit of help if they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a new website. It's brand spanking new. It's called anxiousattachmentstyle.com, literally anxiousattachmentstyle.com. And there's actually 4 free tools on there. If you are somebody that doesn't know what type of anxious attacher you are, you could find out if you're a chaser, a pleaser, detective, or a ghost on there's a quiz. There's also a quiz to know what attachment style you are. There's also a push-pull visualizer. So if you're stuck in a dynamic with an avoidant, you can see that visually. There's also another tool called Is He Avoidant or Just Not Interested? So there's some fun stuff there. I'm also healing with Haley on all social media.
Wonderful. I love that. And I will also put your information in the description box. So that'll,
Thank
if you want
you.
to write it down right
Thank you.
now.
You're the best podcaster ever. I have so much fun with
Thank you.
it.
Yeah, I'm excited because like the first show versus this one to the next one is just like keeps getting more and more um, collaborative. It's awesome, and the energy is awesome. So that being said, I really want to say thank you so much for joining, Haley. Everyone who's watched the show, if you got any value from this, please comment below. click a thumbs
Yes, please.
up and share with your friends because people need healing. And it doesn't have to be anything dramatic, you know? And so I just want to say thank you again and we will catch you on the next show. So enjoy the rest of your day, Haley, and to everyone watching, and we will see you soon.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.